Hello, and welcome to the infomercial about my game, which is based on the idea of place values. So, this game would be best if played with second grade, either at the end of the unit of place values or at the end of the year to review everything that was learned about place values. However, this game would also work for third graders who are just starting out the year as a way of seeing what they remember. So, this game is based on 3 Ohio state standards for second grade mathematics. All 3 of these have to deal with place value. So the first one deals with the idea that students can understand that 3-digit numbers are made up of ones, tens, and hundreds. The second standard has to do with the idea that they can read and write the numbers using base 10 numerals up to the number 1000. The third standard focuses on the idea that students will be able to compare 2 different numbers and determine whether they are greater than, less than, or equal to in regards to their place value. So the goal of this game and this lesson is for students to be able to demonstrate their knowledge of the base 10 place values by creating, writing, and comparing the different numbers according to their place values. So this really is a summative assessment of what students might have learned. So different materials you'll need for this game are the game board as shown here. That's just a rough draft of what it will look like. Students will also need manipulatives. You need at least 3 9-sided dice. You need 9-sided dice because in base 10, place values go up to 9 before you regroup them. You'll also need pre-created trivia and spelling cards, which I'll explain later, as well as a funky die. So there's an image of the dice I have. It doesn't really matter what's on the dice as long as it has 6 sides and each side is different. So how the game is played is students will get into groups of about 4, and so these groups will be their teams, so the whole class will be playing at the same time. If the students correctly answer or correctly perform the task for each space, then they get to advance 1 space, and they'll wait on that space until their next turn. So there are 4 different types of spaces. Spaces that require students to make a number with a certain amount of dice, spaces that require students to advance or go back, spaces that require students to answer a trivia or a spelling card, and spaces that require students to roll the funky dice. So for the first space, with making the number, on the board there is a list of, each space will have a list of how many dice the students need to roll. So for example, one of the spaces is make a number with 3 dice. So students will roll the dice one by one to create the number. So once they roll the first die, they will place it in the center of the board under the ones place. Once they roll the second die, they will place it in the center of the board on the 10 space, and so on. Once the students have created that number, their team will then be required to say the number, spell the number on their whiteboard, write the number, and represent the number with manipulatives. So each student will perform one of these tasks in order for them to get it right and advance a space. If they don't get it right, then they will simply stay on that space until their next turn. So the second type of space, advance or go back spaces, is just self-explanatory. That's what students do when they land on it. The third type of space, the trivia or spelling cards, are the students will just draw either of those types of cards and answer the question. If they get it right, they move ahead. If not, they simply stay there. So the last space, roll the funky die. That's the 6-sided die that has 6 different actions that go with it. There's one where the students will draw a trivia card and have to answer that correctly in order to move ahead. There's the spelling card, where students will have to spell the word on the whiteboard in order to move ahead. There's a wildflower, where the team gets to choose either the trivia or spell card to complete. There's a star card, where the students simply stay on the space and just wait till their next turn and roll again. There's share the love, which is when their team chooses another team to advance one space. And then there's healthy competition, which is where their team chooses another team to compete against. Each team rolls 3 dice, and whoever can create the largest number with those 3 dice then advances 2 spaces. So in this instance, when the students have the competing one, they don't need to roll the dice one by one. They roll them all at the same time and then try to create the largest number however they can. So that's how the game is played. Different modifications for this would be largely in regards to the trivia that is presented. The teacher has a lot of leeway with the type of questions that he or she would create. So if students struggle and need more assistance, they can create simpler questions. If there are students that are more gifted and need a little bit more challenge, the teacher can create harder questions for them. So this is the basis of my lesson and how this game is played. So before the game is actually played, the teacher would review the concepts of place value just to make sure that all the students understand what's going on and are on the same page.